check my audio here, and then we'll get right into it. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time dilly-dallying today. Um, why aren't I coming up on my own feed? Let's see what's happening. Thanks for really promoting this to the top. YouTube, what's going on? Okay, it's very hard to find. It's not great. Okay, very hard to find. Not great. All right, I guess our audio is pretty decent. I should be able to see your guys' comments as well if you leave a comment on there. A little bit earlier today, but I like to do these Saturday morning because for the time being, at least, I have a little bit of quiet time in the morning, and also, um, I just remember there've been a lot of times I'm a very lonely person at my heart of hearts, and there's been a lot of times where I've gone on and just looked for something that was live, that was somebody just kind of chatting or talking about something that I was interested in. And I did that because I was just looking for another like warm body on the other end of the screen. Even if I wasn't interacting with them, it was just nice. There's something nice to know that it's happening live and it's not a pre-recorded thing. So I don't know if anyone else falls into that category or not, but that's yeah, that was my deal for quite a while. I got to tell you, I'm having this I'm having this coffee today. Actually, that sip was a little bit better. Um, I'm trying to find like a local-ish coffee roaster whose beans are good. And I currently have this like service that like sends like mails me coffee, and they become so unreliable. I've used them for I don't know, probably 7 years or something like that, 8 years, and they've become so unreliable. I'm like, I gotta find something that I can just buy locally. Because what ends up happening is like they don't send me stuff when they're supposed to, and then I have to go and find it anyway. I have to go like look for stuff locally anyway. And so I got a local roaster. I'm not going to name who it is because I'm not enjoying it at all. But I was looking at their tasting notes, and they have like Jolly Rancher and like something else, which like if I had noticed that, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. But honestly, what I mostly taste when I first take a sip of this is like fresh manure. I grew up on a farm, and this just immediately reminded me of fresh manure. That was like the tasting note that I had. I tell ya, yeah, it's there. Um, if I get like a good chunk of ice with it, it's a little bit better. But that manure tasting note is absolutely there. It just smells. It tastes how fresh manure smells to me. So I'm not gonna name it. I have shared previously some coffee blends that I love. I should go back and see if I can revisit some of those. But yeah, it's crazy. Hey chats, Ahmed, it's almost 10 o'clock in the morning for me. Hey, hey, Silksby. I can't tell. Wait, yeah, couldn't tell what order those letters were in, but yeah, finding coffee. I went on about 3 bags of coffee, and none of them were great. But this was probably the worst. But I thought I would try it again this morning just to see if I really got that. This tastes like manure to me again, and I sure did. Um, and I think my one of the best bags of coffee I ever had was I think it's called Mocha Java Blend by Intelligentsia, and I don't think that they brew it anymore. I went on their website. I couldn't find it. Um, no, that's not soda. This is coffee. This is so the way that I make this coffee. So I have two main ways that I make coffee. I use the Chemex, which, if you're not familiar, it's that like thing that has kind of the wide bowl at the bottom, and then it's narrow, and then it has the wide opening at the top. And it's funny to me whenever people come over, like especially like family or whatever, they'll be like, "Oh, you're using that new fancy Chemex thing," and I'm like, "This thing was invented in the '50s. Like the Chemex is not a new fancy invention thing. It was developed in the '50s, so it's 75 years old." Um, but in any case, I like to use the Chemex. I'm the only one in my house who drinks coffee, so I don't have to make a tremendous amount. And I just think it's a lot nicer to get a sense of what's going on with, like a very very fresh brew the way that I want it. Hey Lan, hey Allie, how's it going? But I will quickly take you through how I make this one. So this is, I think it's called. I watched this great YouTube video. I should try to find it and like promote this guy because he's pretty cool. I think he called it like a Korean or maybe it was Japanese iced coffee. It was one or the other. But in any case, the way that he did it was I think 30 grams of coffee beans, and then you put on the bottom of the Chemex, you fill it with ice cubes. You put in, I doubled the recipe, so that's why I'm having to take a moment. 250 grams of ice in the bottom, 30 grams of coffee on top, and then you pour in an initial 60 grams of water, and then you add water to it after you wait 45 seconds. You add additional water to it to a total of 275 grams. So that's only interesting to you if you like have a scale and you want to like do that. I double it and I make it a little stronger. So I felt that the 30 grams of coffee beans seemed like too little to me. It was coming out very clear, almost like a coffee tea. Like obviously you can't see my hand through this, right? But when I put in the 30, I could find that. So I upped it to typically I'm doing 35. So, but I double it and I do 70 grams of coffee. I put 500 grams of ice in the bottom, which is about as much as you can put in there before it starts to touch the filter. And then I do an initial pour of 140 grams. And then I wait 45 seconds. And then I do a second pour of a second pour and total it up to 550. So you don't reset the scale after that initial 140. So you keep the 140 and you add until you have a total of 550. So that's how I do this one. No. Yeah, JT, I know. People like don't want to go through all this measuring that, but you probably have things that you nerd out on as well. And this is just like I know that I'm like over the top and I'm measuring grams and I'm pouring in water. I know, I understand that it's a little wacky, and people just want to wake up and push the button and have it or set the timer, right? That's the thing, I guess. Now I haven't had a coffee machine in a very long time, but I know people are setting the timer now and they're like, I wake up and it's made, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds great, but like I want to be able to like mess with it a little and see what is interesting. um JG has a suggestion of snorting a few lines of the of the fresh grinds. Yeah, I'm sure that would kickstart your day. I would presume for a myriad of reasons that would kind of get you going. Um, oh, I have heard good thing. I think my mother-in-law has the dual Breville. Um, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. Um, but I think she has that as well, and she's been very happy with it. Though I think that the pouring is very odd. Like you have to tip the thing almost upside down to get it to come out. Like, and it's not a matter of like loosening the top component or something. It's something is a little weird with that to me. But I'll save for another time because I feel like I've already bogged the video down in grams of coffee and stuff like that. I'll save the other one that I make for another time. The other way that I make coffee in the Chemex. But yeah, it's made correctly. It's just this this blend is brutal. It's the manure blend. Okay, so moving on. Um, I have some questions or some comments here that I wanted to respond to. We did this last Saturday. I thought it was kind of enjoyable, and I thought I'd do it again. If I happened to get enough comments this week that it made sense, a very small channel. I don't get a lot of comments. I don't get a lot of views. I'm lucky if over the course of 24 hours, if I get 2,000 views, it's a ton. Like on all of my videos combined. Um, and like over the course of a month, if I get 20,000 views in total in all of my videos, it's a lot for me. And so yeah, it's a very small channel. I don't get a lot, and so the engagement that I do get, I really appreciate. And thanks for the folks who've already thumbs up the video. That definitely means a lot as well. If you're rewatching this, I'm saying this way too late, but if you're rewatching this, I will put timestamps in the description and or the pinned comment. I'll pin a first comment with the timestamps to what we talk about when. Um, yeah, and I know, JG. It's a labor of love. It's nothing that is really catching fire, which is fine. Luckily, I'm not depending on YouTube for like my income or um, social experience or anything like that. But I do find it to be fun to put different stuff out and see what engagement you do get. Um, Oh, I see. You're saying that it's a lot. Yeah, I guess I know there's a lot of creators out there that you'll see. Um, they put out a video and within like 4 minutes they have like 1,000 views, and you're like, holy smokes. And then you check back a day later and it's like, oh, that has now 67,000 views. And I'm like, wow. And like, I simultaneously have the thought of like, it would be nice to have that much sort of like engagement and exposure or whatever. There's the other part of me that's like, I know the comments that I get now and how I get like my fair share of like crappy comments, which we will definitely have some of those today. Um, I can't imagine what those people are getting who are getting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of views. Um, just I understand at some point they also have to probably just not be looking at it at all. I get few enough that I can. Um, but yeah, that struck me yesterday as I was looking at it. I was like, oh, do I have enough comments to do a response video on Saturday? And I was like, oh, I do. Oh, and some of these are kind of really unfriendly, but so it goes. Um, yeah, Baby Shark video. They knew what they were doing, and then they did all the offshoots of the Baby Shark video, which I didn't. I don't know about the video, but the song at least I didn't realize they just then copy pasted that into different animals and stuff like that, which I didn't realize until I had a child and he got really into Baby Shark, and then I realized that there were all these versions of it. And yeah, they're probably still milking the cow. I mean, that will probably go on for who knows how long. It's not like it has an expiration date on it, I would assume. Um, all right, so my first comment here that I going to respond to, answer, whatever. So it was on a video that I put out that was the title, Are You Using Meditation to Escape the Real World? So it's like this concept where if you get into meditation or mindfulness, sometimes it will come up and folks will say, you're just using that in order to like not have to deal with the realities of the world and so on and so forth. So that was the premise of the video. This comment says, I've recently begun to my own meditation and mindfulness journey, and this was actually quite timely. I've wondered if my own mindfulness practice was in a way triggering me more because I'm giving more intentional space to inner critic or judge voice, in a sense. And I've pondered as I sit in meditation whether I'm just avoiding dealing with an issue. Your perspective really resonates with me. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. And walks, appreciate you. The walks is, if you don't know, I have a whole playlist on this channel. It's called Walk With Me, and I literally walk and film videos. And I have 100 and something out there now. My plan is to try to make it to like 365 because I put them out every single day. So my plan is to make it 365, so a full calendar year, and then assess what I want to do from there. Also, that's a lot of stuff to try to come up with things to talk about. So that's the other piece of it. But yeah, your inner critic or your inner judge, that will definitely get loud. if you're being mindful, if you're meditating. And, you know, I honestly think that to me, meditation and mindfulness are sort of two sides of the same coin. I understand to a degree you're trying to go deeper, you're trying to sort of hone in your experience. However, I think a lot of the way that meditation has, the stance that meditation has taken at this point is oftentimes like you let your thought come in and let it go. Like you're trying to like have this like blank space of mind, or you're trying to meditate on a thing. And to me, I don't find that as engaging or useful as mindfulness, where you're being mindful of everything that you're doing and you aren't trying to like erase things from your brain space, but you're rather trying to like go deeper into them. You're trying to deepen the experience as opposed to broaden the experience, and it does accomplish that thing of like not having scattered mind. You're just very particularly mindfully focusing on what you're doing. I think that you can, if you wanted to intentionally do it, enter into a meditation space, like not a physical space, a mental space, a meditation space, and then impose mindfulness within the meditation. Meaning, if your inner critic, inner judge comes in, that you go deep into it, that you really sit with it. And to me, one of the most helpful things that has come from mindfulness is the idea of staying, of not running away, being able to sit with the discomfort and finding a way to be comfortable in the discomfort. And that's very, very challenging. But to me, I've found that to be much more useful than the meditation exercise of trying to like let thoughts pass by and just let them go. Because to me, that feels like a form of resistance. I know it's sort of passive resistance, or it can be seen as passive resistance. Like, I'm not actively pushing it out, I'm just letting it go. But it's like, yeah, but you're still actively letting it go, right? To me, being able to go deeper and sort of give your uncomfortable parts a home and say, oh, hello, inner critic. Yes, you're telling me that I'm wasting my life again? Okay. Let's sit with each other. Let's stay here. I don't want you to go. I want you to stay right here. And I'm going to give you a nice, warm, comfy chair to sit in. And let you tell me everything you need to tell me about this. And so I can better understand where this is coming from, what it's about. To me, that's a very brave endeavor, right? That is very much like, yeah, bring it to me, and I'm not going to push you away. You know, I hate these things because I feel like people so often buy into things just because they rhyme. But I do think that there is some truth to the idea of what you resist persists. And to the extent to which, you know, that's kind of the case with letting things go, that still to me is a form of resistance to the ideas that are coming in. I haven't had the experience that it stops the thoughts from coming in the future. To me, the thing that has best helped stop the thoughts from coming in has been to give them a warm place to sit in and say, let me take care of you. Let me know everything that I need to know about you, and let me figure out like what you're rooted in, like where are you coming from, what is this all really about, and start to unpack it that way. So going in deeper and pushing into it, essentially making contact with the enemy, if you want to think of it that way. But you know, even more than that, it's giving the enemy a warm bed to sleep in and shelter, and saying, I'll take care of you, but I need you to talk to me, and I need to be able to ask you questions, and you respond, and you not just shout at me all the time, you know. So I put out a video. This was seems like a while ago, but I had queued up videos for a while because I was out of town for a spell. And so I had queued up like a month of videos. So this feels like it was a long time ago, but it might not have been released that long ago. But a video that I put out on like bureaucracy burnout and basically talking about how the epidemic of being burned out in modern day America, if not the rest of the world, so much of it can be just really amplified, if not rooted in the heavy burden of bureaucracy that the average American has to deal with all of the time. I mean, people complain about things like the DMV and voting, stuff like that they sort of encounter once in a blue moon. But, repetitive stuff like the bureaucracy of filing your taxes and all the confusion that surrounds that and the heavy hammer, that it sort of looms over you as it pertains to that. Taxes stands out for sure. Healthcare is a big bureaucratic mess where it's like in people's most desperate and challenging times, they are then met with an even greater, just shockingly impossible bureaucratic burden that they then have to navigate through, and that shouldn't be where they're putting their time, attention, or energy. And so, these things can really, really pile on to, if you're already a little bit burned out, definitely, I think it amplifies it tremendously. If you're not already burned out, I think that it sort of sets you on a path to get there. But this person had said, as soon as I saw insurance, I had to hear what you have to say. I can't relate to the health insurance thing because this is rolled into our tax system in Canada, which is why our taxes are much higher. But house and car insurance is horrible in Canada, and I'm obligated to carry this insurance. Yeah, we definitely have to have car insurance here in the US as well. I believe you have to have homeowners insurance, but I don't know if that's by state or municipality or whatever, or if I'm just completely wrong in that. But car insurance for sure. This is one of the things that's weird to me, where like people get so crazed about like having to have a certain type of insurance, or people often forget, like, yeah, you are required to have car insurance. I don't often see, or I don't know if I ever see some like major like tussle or like brouhaha around folks just clamoring for like, why do I have to have this car insurance? This shouldn't, this is the government like overstepping and being oppressive to me. I don't see that. I don't know why that then becomes the case in other areas. Maybe it is just sort of like the layering on of things, but yeah, carrying home and car insurance is incredibly expensive. I'm lucky enough to never have had a car accident, or I don't think I've ever had a speeding ticket even. So in any case, I have like no marks on my license. And hey, Inept Owl, sorry, Inept Owl said, "You look like my dad." Cool. Thanks for letting me know. And but even with that driving record that I have, it still is very expensive. And yeah, combine those things, house insurance and car insurance, it's, for me, it's about like 1.5 mortgage payments or so, for the year. So it's not as crazy to me as like, property tax. Property tax to me feels like, I've been saying this for a long time, and I feel like it's just starting to get some folks are just starting to talk about it now, or at least it seems to be getting more publicity now. But I've said for a very long time that, like, this idea of home ownership in the U.S., like, it doesn't really exist the way that it's sold to you, right? It's sold that you're like putting it in this investment, and one day you could own your house, and you could like, it could just be yours. And I know there's a whole other realm of people who talk about it as an investment vehicle, and like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about this idea that like you can own your home and it's yours, and it's your own little sanctuary. That's not really true, because as long as you are obligated to pay property tax, you you don't really, there's always a mechanism by which you can lose that home. You can have it completely paid off, and if you for some reason can't pay or don't pay your property tax, it'll be taken away. And so there isn't really unless you're in a place where there is no property tax. you know I don't know how you would really ever own your own place and really be like totally off the hook, if you will, and unburdened by that bureaucracy. I don't know that it exists. Maybe it does. Um, I'm talking about here in the U.S. I mean, maybe it exists elsewhere. That would make more sense to me. But here in the U.S., yeah, I don't know if there's anywhere where you can literally just own your thing, and the taxes don't exist, and it couldn't be taken away from you unless you decided to sell it. Um, but if there is, I'd be interested to hear about it in the comments. Inept Owl says, I gave up trying to own a home. I bought an RV. Much better. Yeah, I've thought about that many, many times. I mean, not now because I have many people that depend on me, but in my youth, I I traveled around a lot, and I actually did buy a van for a while, but it ended up to be such a tragic event because it like broke down, and I had spent all the money on the van, and I didn't have money to fix it, and I ended up actually, yeah, I was driving around. The plan was to like travel around, live in the van, and travel around to and play shows. I was playing music at the time, and somewhere in, I think it was Iowa. I think I was coming from whatever that town is in. Is it Iowa City? Um, where there's some like really well established college. I don't know. In any case, it was like around that area, coming from there or something, and it broke down. Got it to a repair place, and whatever they had told me, I don't remember now. This was 15 years ago or more. Um, Whatever they had told me, I was like, yeah, I can't do that. And I like literally had to sort of beg them to let me just leave the vehicle with them. I was like, I don't know how to dispose of a vehicle, but I can't do anything with this. So I need you to just keep it. Can you please do it? And but they like really didn't want to. And finally I got them to. And I had to like get a cab. They like called me a cab to go to the nearest airport. Is like some weird regional airport, and I had to like get a connecting flight through an actual airport to get back to New York. But yeah, that was my attempt at van life. It was very short lived. I think I probably had that thing for a month or two. And never was able to make the full transition even into like living in it or whatever. Um, Inept Owl says, how do the Amish get around property taxes? I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I don't even know that they don't. But if so, I would imagine it's some sort of like, maybe some sort of situation where there's a carve out like there are for like Native Americans, like tribal areas and whatnot, and there's certain things that just don't apply in those spaces. I don't know. Or it's just maybe the municipalities around where they um, are adjusted to that. Yeah, I don't know. The other possibility is maybe they do have to pay property taxes. I don't know. Um, but all right. The next comment was on so this is on that same video, that bureaucracy burnout. I don't like the system at all. It's fake and prescripted. Prescribed, maybe they mean. It wants everyone to perpetually work and have zero time for family. It makes people depressed, then blames people and medicates them to hide the fact that something is wrong. I want to see more employee owned companies and profit sharing companies. I want people to wake up and completely change this system. Trust family and close friends and find a way out. There's not a lot there that I would disagree with. Not that the purpose of this video is to disagree with things, but yeah, there is a lot about the system. I put this is on this bureaucracy burnout video, but I actually put 2 videos out relatively recently that were how the system fails children, and then the next day I put one out that was how the system fails adults, and it's very much in the same vein of like the way that things are set up is really foolish. And if you think about it in the way that I explain it in those videos, it's pretty obvious. And in that way, yeah, it's completely manufactured, it's completely made up and fake and prescribed. And yeah, there's for sure the reality that a certain group of people, a certain system of people, certain class of people, however you want to think of it, they do want people to perpetually work and have 0 time for family. This is also something, I don't know that I've put this video out yet. No, I think I did. I put out a video that was like, this is how I know that Americans system, the system in America, isn't actually interested in like family values or maintaining like the family component or whatever. And one of the reasons is because the emphasis is not put on, you work this amount of time, you put in this amount of effort, and you can then have the security and the know-all that you'll be able to have the rest of your time to pursue your endeavors, to spend time with family, to enrich the family system in order to improve the society for decades to come, right? To have just children who have better outcomes because they have parents who aren't just running themselves ragged, trying to either just survive, right? And work enough jobs to make enough money to survive, or to work enough jobs to make enough money to keep up with the Joneses, essentially, right? That old concept of keeping up with the Joneses, and which could boil down to is just sort of like giving into the greed mindset. But yeah, this system is absolutely not set up to carve out like real considerations for you need time for your family, for your parents, for your spouse, for your siblings, for your children. And we don't make concessions and carve outs for that. We make concessions and carve outs for a bunch of other things, right? And it seems to not be a priority. So it's hard for me to take seriously the idea that the system in America does view family and children and the vibrancy of that, creating an environment where that can thrive, seriously. It doesn't seem to take it seriously to me. It seems to be a talking point, sounds good, and they'll roll it out every 2 to 4 years in order to get some votes or something. But I don't see meaningful forays into that area that actually systemically put in place anything to uphold that value. Yeah, and then people end up depressed and leaning on medication. Medication takes a lot of different forms, right? It can be like literal prescription medication, but it can obviously be like the legal drug space is expanding. And it can also be things like workaholism, like people who shop too much. Those are providing them the same distraction or comfort that they're lacking, the same way that a medication or a legal drug does. I put out a video. The next couple of comments are on unlikely connections. This was unlikely connections between Trump, Bernie Sanders, and the United Healthcare CEO. I shouldn't say healthcare. When I was talking about that much more frequently, I was able to stop myself from saying healthcare. It's not healthcare. The United for-profit off of your bad health or your good health. But in any case, the situation with that CEO, Bernie, and Trump, I drew what I felt were you know, reasonable and to me very obvious connections between all of those people and events. And the first comment on there says Andrew Whitty, another CEO of United Healthcare, took home over 23 million in stocks and cash last year, making over $64,000 a day. Heather Bresch, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, head of EpiPen, took home over $53,000 a day. These salaries are rife throughout the corrupt system. It will get worse under the new administration. Yeah, maybe. I mean, there certainly is a rush of ultra wealthy people into the current administration, and it's something that like blue collar working class people who do oftentimes support Republicans at this point. They buy it hook, line, and sinker. And to me, like I said, I grew up on a 200-acre family farm. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and we were very blue collar. So mechanics, truck drivers, farmers, construction workers, and I feel like I understand that mindset quite well. And the people in my environment who fit that bill, who would be like the modern day Republican voter, they did not trust like billionaires, like tech giants, tech gurus. There was not a trust of like, oh, they have my best interest at heart because they say so. I don't have another good reason because what? Other than they say so. But to me, those folks were always ultra skeptical. I mean, skeptical is probably too soft of a word, of the wealthy class, because they saw it as people who were profiting off of their ever dwindling middle class and the intrinsic sort of there's a word here that I can't find at the moment, but that they had some level of respect that was provided to them. Dignity, that's the word I'm looking for. I knew it was a D word. Dignity, that there was some built-in dignity to being like a farmer, to being somebody who helped build roads and hospitals and houses and fix your cars. And at this point, it feels to me like more often than not, those people and those professions are viewed as like, oh, how can we profit off of them and let them do all the work? We'll take most of the money, and we'll just say that we're smarter. Maybe this is me still, feeling the influence of that, early environment that I was in, but it was pervasive. I don't really understand how they are making that connection today to like, no, we think that like Zuckerberg being all Trumpy at this point, or Peter Thiel, or whomever, or Elon. I see sometimes people who are like they like put it out as a badge of honor that like Elon's trying to get chips in people's heads, like, and I just think like like owning the largest or most influential at the moment, I think, social media platform, well, maybe TikTok, yeah, but social media platform, having Starlink, so hypothetically, I suppose he could have access to anything that anyone's doing as it pertains to connectivity to the internet, if they're utilizing that, and then having Neuralink, and I can't imagine these blue collar workers who think that like something like Neuralink, that person has middle class best interest at heart. Like I can't get beyond anything other than people being like, get that person away from me. Like that is a lunatic. That idea, no way, no way. I mean, these are supposed to be like oftentimes like church going people and sign of the beast folks, and but even if they're looking for salt of the earth kind of blue collar work ethic and stuff like that, and then they, yeah. In any case, I'm just going to repeat what I said before, but it's weird to me. Um, but yeah, that's heavy. And then yeah, the greed. Obviously, the pay scales at the top are just. I don't, through all of this like Doge and government efficiency stuff, and pretending like they're gonna send people $5,000. Like, to me, that idea of sending people $5,000 sounds just like let them eat cake to me. And the thing that would be much more impactful would be to have some sort of system where it wasn't seen as like a tremendous benefit, or seen as even an okay thing to do, to hoard wealth off of the backs of people who are actually doing the work, to hoard wealth the way that the 1% do. I mean, the wealth gap is tremendous, and I think a lot of the people who just sort of give into it at this point have copium dreams of being able to become part of that class or something, or they think because they have a few $1,000,000 that they fit the bill. But at this point, that's certainly not the case. But yeah. The next comment, I don't like the system at all. Oh wait, I did that one already. The next the next comment on the Unlikely Connections video, people are hungry for a revolution, not just to blow up the oppressive, violent status quo's trajectory, but a desire to return to the vision of America they established. I'm not condoning the racist, sexist, classist norms of the late 16th century. Late 16th century? Like the late 1500s? Okay. But rather the essential foundational principles of freedom and their unfolding over time. What freedom actually is changes. Women still struggle against sexism, and minorities, racial, cultural, or political, are, to this day, discriminated against systemically. Still, the foundational doctrine allows for ever more freedom and dignity for all previously marginalized groups. That is a long and winding path. I think what they're I think what they're saying is there is still a lot of progress to be made, but there has been some progress, and to not maybe throw out the baby with the bathwater in that way. It's just this opening line. I'm not quite sure how to square that with the idea that I just relayed there. But I think that they're saying, maybe they're trying to separate the two and say, look, there were a core set of fundamental freedoms that were established at the outset. At the outset, we were also in a time frame where there was a lot of really unfortunate things that were happening, a lot of oppressive things, a lot of just unnecessary systemic badness, things that we wouldn't want in modern day society. And I think whoever they are trying to maybe unlink the two, right? And say the freedom portion is what people are striving for. That's not to say that we want to like literally go back to that time frame, because we have made progress in a lot of areas, and we don't want to just ditch those. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there is, I have spent a lot of time in the startup world, and I do have an instinctual at this point sort of inclination to say, it is good to maybe blow a thing up, and just ruin it and start over, go in and break a bunch of things and then see how it needs to be fixed, because it does feel at times that things are just so messy and such a big bag of muck and a whole bunch of legacy stuff that nobody can even keep track of anymore, that that to just wipe the whole slate clean and say, okay, how do we piece this back together in a way that we actually want to? There's a lot of that I understand. And, this would be maybe a bit of that, though I think you're saying like maintain some of the fundamental truths that we feel like we've unraveled as it pertains to like doing the best that we can to reduce the racial, cultural, um, sexist stuff that's been going on. Okay. A video that I put out on the wealth divide. So this was the study that had come out that was basically like 1% of, I think it was, I don't know if it was the US or if it was global, but 1% own 45%, I believe it was, I'm going off memory here, 1% own 45% of the wealth, and 44% live below the poverty level. And so 1% have 45% of the wealth, which means the other 99% have 55% of the wealth. And because of that, 44% live in poverty. And I was basically saying there that this should be a tragedy. Like the results of this study should be framed as like this is an absolute global societal meltdown tragedy, and we should be ashamed of it, and we should be clamoring day and night to fix it. If anything, I just talked about wiping the slate clean, blowing up the system and starting over and saying, how do we do this better? We can't work with it as it exists because it's too messy. It's too entrenched and there's too much legacy involved. We need to blow it up. I think that this sort of wealth situation fits that to a T. But it will take a lot more to get that done because folks who are heavily resourced, who are heavily influential and powerful, have little to no reason to want to do that. And so it would have to come from that bottom 99%, a bunch of which have bought into this idea and think that they're part of the the elite class or the 1% or whatever. And so they're not going to shift off of that. But there still is a good chunk that does pertain to. So yeah, that was basically the video that I put out. Good morning, Steve. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. You make up a large percent of the audience at this point. Every single person who joins. So I got a bunch of comments on that video. A bunch from me. So this first one, hey Dan, you ever heard of the Pareto principle? Thanks for playing. I don't know what the thanks for playing is. Pareto principle is like 80% of outcomes come from 20% of the causes or 20% of the effort. I think it's referred to as something like the vital few or something like that. Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know how it pertains to this wealth gap video. I don't know if you're saying the way that the 1% gets so wealthy is by following the Pareto principle. I have no idea. But thanks for the comment. The next comment, politicians can't do anything but be politicians. I can survive without them. Yeah, there seems to be a limited few decent ones out there, right? Hopefully more. One thing that I think gets very, very lost in all of this, because there is such an intense spotlight on the national stage, right? So people get very fixated on the president, of course, and then the people who have the highest profile or the highest media profile, I should say, within that administration. And then, some of the more loudmouth, like members of Congress. And because there's a few of them, you probably know sort of the names of some or most of the Supreme Court justices. But what gets lost in all of that are people who are probably just much more normal people who do populate your local politics. And it's a much less sexy thing to kind of try to dive into and get interested in and participate in. But in terms of politicians just being politicians and feeling like you can survive without them, Yeah, I definitely get that. If you're just looking at sort of like the national level, like those three branches of government, and that's the case because yeah, it does often feel like that. I wouldn't strongly disagree with that in any case, but locally, I think there's probably some gems that you could find that they may be sort of bogged down and burdened by the top line national three branches of government political class, but they may have a lot of wiggle room. Or hypothetically, if Republicans were to do what they claim that they want to do, which is like states' rights and like let the local governments, dominate the show, those people could have a ton of power and influence, and they would probably be would feel to you much more like normal people that are just sort of like embodying a political space, a political role, but that they aren't like trying to just be a politician because they can collect a paycheck and they can't really do anything else. Um, so maybe look there. I don't know. I don't know if I should be forcing so hard to try to find a glimmer of hope, but on the wealth divide, somebody just put the comment, short answer, humans suck. There's a lot of ways in which humans suck, for sure. I wouldn't dispute that. Honestly, I think that the fact that we can't come to terms with our own bad parts and our own, angry, divisive um, parts. I think that the fact that we can't admit that about ourselves um, is oftentimes what causes such a divide. Because I think about something like cancel culture, for example, right? The idea that we have to go out there and just sort of like talk about blow up a system, like that was an attempt to blow up a system. And there's this one set of people who have been hurt and oppressed and put upon, and the way that they want to fight back is very much by just taking the biggest sledgehammer and doing the most damage that they can. And it's not that I don't understand that impulse, um, but it then sort of tears away the idea that within every person, and therefore every community, and therefore every country, right? This keeps bubbling out. Um, Person, family, community, state, so on and so forth. Um, it's not that you are good or bad; it's that you are good and bad. If you're like intent on using the words good and bad, um, you aren't one or the other. You are both. And if you can't accept that and see that in yourself, you're not going to be able to see that in other people, and you're going to probably deem yourself to be a good person, and find other people who you can deem to be good, but find a whole bunch of people who you can just deem to be bad, and that is that's the extent of it. It's just very black and white, and it's just not the case. People who have been hurt and who have reason to seek retribution have absolutely hurt other people as well. So, just I would say we need to keep that in mind more. It's a harder thing to do because it's very easy to just say yes, no, good, bad. Um, but it doesn't accurately reflect life or anyone's internal world or external world. All right, next comment. Poverty is the mental illness. Nothing stops you from being a millionaire except yourself. My family didn't have money to send me to college, so I worked at UPS in the morning and at the college library in the evening. Okay, cool. You're talking about a very limited number of things here. For one, I don't know that this person is a millionaire. The is a very short message, so it's hard to glean a lot. It comes across to me as though this person is a millionaire and is like very like pat themselves on the back. Not that they should, you know, not pat themselves on the back, but the self righteousness of the comment is something. They're talking about a very limited number of things here, though. They're talking about my family couldn't pay for me to go to college, so I worked at UPS in the morning and the college library in the evening. What they are not accounting for there is all of the capacity and resources and capability that they had in order to be able to do that. Um, and there's a lot more that goes on with an individual, with the internal systems of a person, with the experiences that a person has, that can influence their ability to resource themselves that way, or to be able to overcome previous things that have happened that might inhibit them from being able to sort of activate themselves in that way. And we pedestalize so much this idea around like action, action, action. You know, there's a lot of times where the action that you take, this like flooding yourself with work, right? And you're like, oh, I'm the good boy here. I'm gonna be the successful one because I'm gonna have a bank account that says blah. Your need to have a bank account that says blah in order to prove that you are sort of part of some strata of society that is either more capable or more high functioning or smarter than, there's something there that you are just not attuning yourself to. I guarantee it. And that is very much shadowed by your working morning and night. It's fine to work morning and night, but just know that if you're working morning and night to be able to do something, why are you so hell bent on needing to prove that something? And also, if you're working morning and night, the consumption, like the mind consumption of that, like what are you afraid of sitting in a room quiet and seeing what comes into your mind, right? You are overly occupying yourself for some very good reason. And so you're completely shutting all of that out and pretending like it doesn't exist. And yet you're saying that folks that can't access this part and can't make that amount of money, that the poverty is the mental illness. I think you've got it sort of really reversed there. Mental illness, well, I mean, first of all, it's stupid to be using mental illness as like a pejorative, right? That's a huge part of the problem here, is that that's seen as some like you're putting someone down. It's been shuttered for so long that now you're able to acknowledge that mental illness exists, but then people are like, oh, now I'm going to use it as an insult. It's not an insult. And maybe that's how this person took it. I don't know. But I think that saying purely that people who struggle and that struggle then bleeds into their financial capabilities are struggling from some mental illness, yeah, there's probably a healthy dose of that. What gets completely ignored is the fact that the ways by which we have allowed people to build wealth beyond the need of wealth in this country specifically, oftentimes is also harbored in a shuttering, a turning away from, a burying of their own struggles or mental illness. But there's some ways in which people, through expression or burying of their mental illness, that we reward, and there's certain things that we punish. And this gets back to what I was saying before about you're good or you're bad. You're good or you're bad, right? You're either poor or you're wealthy. You're either incapable or you're capable. You're either a parasite or you're a provider. It's just not true. Everyone, every individual, every family, every community, every state, it incorporates both. And to just completely shutter one out because you're afraid to approach it, it's understandable, but your inability to acknowledge it is not going to change anything. All right. Like I said, this video had a bunch of comments. So this is on the wealth divide. This person says, why is working looked at more positive than doing drugs? I assume they're talking about, I didn't go back and watch the video, but I assume I probably said in the video something about like the same thing that causes people to like get addicted to drugs is the same thing that causes people to become workaholics, right? And that it's an expression of the same issue. It's just they're handling it in a different way. And yet we reward the workaholic to the extreme, and we punish the drug addict to the extreme. And this person says, why is working looked at more positive than doing drugs? I think that's obvious. I assume that you are asking this rhetorically, but we're talking about two totally different things here. You have to understand that. You're talking about the outside world. You're saying, why does the outside world reward this thing and punish this thing? That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the inner world. I'm talking about in your inner world, or in a person's inner world, your expression of whatever it is that you're burying, struggling with, unable to process and manage through, the expression that you have of that is workaholism, alcoholism, drug addiction. Your expression is different in the outside world, but the inside world is the same. So I understand you're asking the question, or you're putting it out there. I don't think you're really asking the question. I think you're putting it out there as what you think is a really sort of pithy statement. But we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about inwardly, the same thing is happening. And then the outward expression is such that either you get a benefit or you get completely demolished. And yes, those two expressions are different things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that the inward thing is the same. Next comment on the wealth divide. You're right. People are sold on religious issues like someone else's sexual preferences or gender identity when the real issue is the greed. If the issue is religion, why do they support untold wealth in the hands of the few while many starve? Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, there is certainly a strong level of disconnect, as far as I see it, between what religion preaches and tells you, what you would read about, and then what folks actually go out and do. The disconnect is profound, and no one wants to really admit it. And why not? I assume it's because they're ashamed, and because they don't really see how they could access the things that they proclaim to believe in the church or the temple or whatever. They don't really see how they could manage that in the real world, which is to a degree understandable. It would be very, very difficult to be able to actually care for the poor, to actually not like give in to the greed. Yeah, you would put a lot at risk to be able to do that. But it is concerning when you see how strong the hypocrisy is. And then it just becomes fixated not on the good that you could do, but on who can you like be mad at, right? Who can you dehumanize that doesn't align with your religious belief or something? Whereas, I'm not a tremendously religious person, though I'm very interested in different religions. But to me, the benefit of religious belief in some way was often that you would look for the good that you could do, the good that you could put out into the world, the good that you could do for others. And I do think, to a degree, that has been really turned on its head and focused on, who doesn't fit into our mold, and why should we disown them from family, from society, whatever. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Okay, last two comments on the wealth divide. Heart is in the right place. Just need a heaping dose of action behind those words, Guy. Okay. You're leaving a comment on a video. So if you had more information, or if you had an idea of action, it would be much more effective, I think, to list some of that out. I don't know if there's a character limit on YouTube comments. presumably, but this is nowhere near the character limit, I can assure you. Um, so I could sort of say the same thing back to this person. But yeah, I think we all have more struggles and more concerns than we know how to, or that we feel that we're able to take action in addressing. I think that's very much the case. So yeah, some of those things I'm going to end up talking about, and I don't necessarily know what to do about it other than to acknowledge it. But I don't think that that's inactive. I think acknowledging it gets a bad rap in the sense of like, oh, you're just complaining about it. We'll go do something about it. I think oftentimes doing something about it comes after even unpacking what it is that you're looking at and how you're understanding it to begin with. And so talking about it gets you that level of unpacking it and coming to some framework whereby you can express it in words, right? And having that level of understanding of it where you can take thought and feeling and put it to words is valuable. But yeah, I don't then discount the idea that that's just the beginning. It's not the end. So to the degree to which that's the case, I'll agree with you there. People live in poverty because they listen to self-proclaimed YouTube stock gurus like you and buy a POS, piece of poop, like apps. They're talking about a stock ticker symbol at $6 plus. I made $2,000 on $150 worth of apps puts to $6, $5.50, and $5 for today's expiry. This is an unnecessarily lengthy comment. If there weren't even bigger clowns out there than you, I would add you to my list of YouTube stock reverse indicator clowns. Oh no! That's terrifying. Being added to a list of reverse indicator clowns. In the meantime, keep on guessing. Foo. I don't know what foo means. Maybe fool. Like you're a fool. I don't know if this person has actually watched many of my videos. I don't even know if they watched that video. Except they did. I don't know how they would have gotten this jumbled mess out of it. But I definitely never proclaim myself to be a stock guru. I mean, first of all, as you indicate in here, I have a tremendously small channel. I'm not out there pumping things. I'm not out there giving buy signals in a Discord and whatever. I very much always try to give both sides, or three sides of the coin, really. It can go up. This is why it could go up, could go down. Here's some levels it could go down to. It could always go sideways. And actually, apps, because I did look at it, has been following the levels quite well. So maybe you benefited on those put options by following the levels down based on the levels that I had on the chart, because it has been hitting those levels really consistently since I put that video out. So yeah, that's all I can say. I mean, if you made $2,000 on $150 worth of apps puts, you should go do something more enjoyable with your time than leave lengthy comments trying to like trash somebody else who definitely doesn't fit the mold of what you're trying to say, and putting out the very, very scary threat of putting that person on a list of YouTube stock reverse indicator clowns. It's not just reverse indicator clowns, it's hashtag reverse indicator and then a separate word, clowns, without a hashtag. So but you're doing really great work out there, so we appreciate the comment. All right, I put out a short, I think this was a short, on can we bridge the divide, and basically I think it was taken from a video, I think the short was taken from a video about like, can we stop with the FAFO stuff and can we start to come together in some ways that aren't just each side just constantly trying to one up each other. There's like become this sense of greed of like winning some social fight or something, the same way that there's greed in like the capitalistic environment. But in any case, yeah, my goal, the essence of this short was like, Can we stop just yelling and screaming at each other and realize that on both sides, a bunch of this nonsense is coming from the top down. And so the person you're yelling at is not the person who's actually causing the pain. And that in many ways, even if you feel very different from or distanced from a person of a different view, in many ways, if things really got down to it, we would all be in the same boat. So that was the gist of that video. And a comment I got here: we cannot trick MAGA into becoming human. That would be like trying to get a feral dog to go to therapy. Okay, I understand you're mad at MAGA people. I understand. Yeah, I get it. I don't, it's not that I don't get it. I don't think that this is useful. The MAGA person was something before they became the MAGA person, because MAGA hasn't existed for that long, right? And to me, it's not like they are, again, it's not that they're good or bad and that that's all that they are, like benevolent or evil. It's they're coming from somewhere, they have a perspective, and to just not try to understand what's happening at all or understand what common ground you have, I just think lumping people into this like dehumanistic clump is just, it's just going to make things much, much worse. And I think there's a lot of people who don't see that yet because they feel so stressed and anxiety induced and they just want to lash out. And I get that. I'm hopeful that we can move past that sooner than later, because I think that that's probably what will be the most destructive thing in the end. Person says, I'm sorry, negatively impact how? I think they're talking about, if I'm remembering correctly, the short I had said, trying to say like, stop with the FAFO stuff. If you see somebody who voted for Trump and then gets negatively impacted by a Trump policy, can we not just leap to FAFO? And then this person said, negatively impact how? I assume this is a Trump can do no wrong kind of person. The one that stands out to me is the farmers. Right? This is well documented from actual farmers who have put out media, since everybody has a camera and a video recorder in their pocket these days. They've put out plenty of things around how, like, tearing away the Inflation Reduction Act, I think that's what it's called, freezing those funds, negatively impacts them, puts their farm, their livelihood at risk. And many of them are folks who voted for Trump and are very much feeling the impact. And my point in the video was, stop just flooding their comment section in their inboxes with FAFO. Like, that's not helpful. That just makes things worse. That entrenches those people in their belief that, like, you know what, like, Trump is doing this thing that doesn't help me, but the other side is just giving me a bunch of FAFO, and so I can't turn to them. So you're just isolating a person who is saying, like, wait a minute, like, something bad is happening. And yeah, I understand people get upset too, that it feels like sometimes people don't care about a situation until it impacts them directly. Okay, you gotta give people a little bit of grace here. There needs to be a little bit of wiggle room. Okay? Somebody's gonna move toward where you want them to be moving toward. Meet them, greet them, invite them in. You don't have to just immediately meet them at the door and say, hold on, you can't come in here because you're realizing this too late, or you should have picked up on. They can't do anything about that. Okay? They can come to understand it, but it's not going to be a Tony Robbins, like, say this and it'll fix all of your things. It's not like that. Real life is not like that. So that's how negatively impact. You can go find any number of those videos. Like, go look them up. Farmers, MAGA, FAFO. If you put that into a search bar, I think you'll probably find stuff. The divide is not left and right, it's top and bottom. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true. Well, I think it's true in the underlying sense. I think that's probably more empirically true. I think but I think the divide, the dangerous divide, is right and left. I think that I think that there is an intentional quality to like you're talking about, the actual divide of top to bottom. I think there's a quality to the folks that are actually top bottom of that to try to cause it to be left versus right, because shift the focus, right? You're not mad at me, you're mad at them. And yeah, I think you're true in a fundamental way. But I think systemically across the social environment at the moment, it is expressed and perceived still predominantly as left versus right. But I hope that shift starts to take place. All right, folks, I'm wiped out. It's been a very long video, but thanks for popping in. For folks who popped in, I really appreciate it. If you're watching this on the re-airing, on the re-upload, I can't believe that you made it this far. So yeah, drop any comments if you have them, and I'll do this as periodically or as frequently as I can. And I'll see you next time. Bye.